I admit that in the past I've been a nasty. They weren't kidding when they called me well a witch. But you'll find that nowadays I've like mended all my ways, repent and seen the light and made a switch. True? No! Hey, it's Romania Black! And like I'm just a supreme ghost trying to help you out, Xie Lian. We're on chapters 187 to 189 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. It's been 2 weeks since I've read the last chapters. I had to go on a trip, and so I knew I was going to be out of town over the weekend. Wasn't going to be able to record, so I recorded ahead fairly early on. And there was like a new Manhwa chapter that came out, so I went ahead and did that. And then I thought, okay, well, the following week, I'm going to be gone, and there's no Manhwa chapter. And then the next week, I'll have to wait again if I want to get the Manhwa chapter. And I was like, I thought about recording early, like as soon as I got back from my trip, but I was like, you know what? I'll wait a week. I'll get some more comments, and so then I'll get it and be able to talk about the Manhwa chapter, which is great. I ended up being really busy, so it helped make the time go by faster. So yeah, it's been 2 weeks, and I'm not going to lie. 2 weeks away from this trauma has done Romania Black good for Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 6. Oh, man. Chapters 184 to 186 were a lot. They were emotional. I went back and listened to the discussion again today since it had been a couple weeks. There was a lot that happened, and I didn't feel great after them. So I didn't have a problem with taking off, but I will admit the only thing that I'm super excited about is Bai WuXiang is here. In the past, it's the first time Xie Lian's seen them since the fall of Shanla. And they're just like, well, hi, Your Highness. Like, you're all by yourself there. Like, what can I do? I love making them like Valley Girl Ursula, basically, is my aesthetic for Bai WuXiang right now. But oh my God. So yeah, we're on chapters 187 to 189. We basically have a month left with volume 6. I figured out we have 4 more installments for volume 6. This is one of 4. And so we'll be starting volume 7 right around the time that season 2 of the Donghua comes and right around Halloween. So we'll probably need it at that point. I have a feeling season 2 of the Donghua we are going to need a lot. I'm really excited though, because the Donghua is so soon. I'm very excited about that. I have some comments I want to talk about. I was very torn whether I wanted to talk about the Manhwa chapter before or after this chapter set, but I think I'm going to do it before, so this will be a long introduction. But let's go ahead and do the comments. I did have a lot of comments. I went back and looked through chapters 182 to 183, and some people have commented about it in the comment section, but yes, the master-servant relationship that's discussed in those chapters, it very much mirrors kind of WuXiang's problems and why they left Xie Lian, which I will argue Xie Lian wasn't cruel like the master to the servant in the example that the mob is kind of using, but you can see why it's sort of a weird situation, because you can see why WuXiang left if you're trying to make that comparison in that situation, because WuXiang was just overworked and didn't feel compensated. But you know what sucks about that? Somebody was commenting about like Xie Lian feeling bad that WuXiang left because he didn't compensate him, and enough, and Feng Xin, Xie Lian's terrified he's going to leave, and that's why he's starting to compensate him. But I'm like, they were also his friends, right? Or were they not? You know, that's the big question. If they were his friends and they were getting compensated, maybe not as much as they should have been, but Xie Lian wasn't mean or anything. It's one of those situations like, I think if WuXiang and them had spoken up, they would have been compensated, but it's a whole can of worms, but I see the comparison, right? And so on Discord, we talked about the first time that Xie Lian and WuXiang met was during a ghost festival. It was when they were on the cart during the ghost festival, the first time they met in this series. But they met back during the ghost festival when WuXiang was in the lantern. So it's like, man, that ghost festival, just what a time for Xie Lian and WuXiang to meet. They should just make it like, you know how some couples do their like first date anniversary? That should be WuXiang and Xie Lian's first date anniversary is the ghost festival. That should be just every year that's their anniversary. It seems pretty legit. WuXiang's murals as well. Someone commented, Kixk, asked and wondered if WuXiang's murals were what were featured in the OP for season 1 of the Donghua, because they kind of fall along the same story. I thought that would be cool if WuXiang's murals were what the focus are in the OP's, you know, opening for the season 1 of the Donghua. That would be really, really neat. It'd be a nice little foreshadowing Easter egg for everybody that's read the book. So that's kind of cool. Kixkay also notes that HEADPHONE had been kicked out of the army by WuXiang, which this broke my heart, which means because he was kicked out of the army by WuXiang, he died on the battlefield. He was following Xie Lian because he believed in him, not because of military obligation. I was like, like reading that. I was like, no. He didn't want Xie Lian to know either, because that would just add to Xie Lian's guilt that he didn't want Xie Lian to know he'd been kicked out of the army, because that would have just added to the guilt of him knowing that, oh, you followed me anyway. Oh, okay. Oh my God, just break my heart. Anime Annie, I had a couple comments from them. Back in chapters 180 to 181, WuXiang was willing to let go of his pride to eat, which Fengshen and Xie Lian would not, which is interesting because WuXiang's pride comes back when he doesn't help Xie Lian later. So it's interesting how that kind of wanes and goes to and fro. Anime Annie also noted that getting Hongjin back shows Fengshen's trauma afterwards. Yeah, it is good to note that Xie Lian wasn't the only one suffering throughout all this. Fengshen and WuXiang did suffer as well. WuXiang just got out of there before his suffering got to Fengshen and Xie Lian's level. And then Fengshen aiming the arrow at Xie Lian. Anime Annie was like, there's probably a reason why Fengshen didn't want to do that. Not only because, you know, he's been entrusted with protecting Xie Lian his whole life. Now that he has to fire an arrow against him, he's like, that's not in his character at all. But even sadder is the idea that him pointing a weapon at Xie Lian is like the final rung on the ladder of, it's the fall of Shanla. They're no longer what they were before, which is horrifically sad. And then Anime Annie noted that Xie Lian kneeling down to pick up the coins and everything, being in this apologetic kneeling position, is kind of like the statues that we see made of him kneeling and prostrating. So it's like, awesome, that's exciting. And then Be Happy and Couscous noted in season 1 of the Donghua that WuXiang offered WuXiang back the potion that he drank. Like when they were at Banyu, they were at the Banyu Pass, they were on their way there, and they stopped at that little inn. WuXiang offered HEADPHONE a drink that was going to reveal who he was, and HEADPHONE's like, no, how about you drink it instead? I was like, oh my God! Foreshadowing that HEADPHONE knew it was WuXiang and was like, go ahead and drink it. You know, and if WuXiang had drank it, it would have revealed he wasn't Fu Yao, he was WuXiang, and that's why WuXiang was like, oh, Xie Lian, I don't want to drink it, and that's why he was panicking. I'm like, that's amazing. And then finally, as QQLBH314 says that back at Paradise Manor, Xie Lian talked about how he hated things, as when he was younger, he hated things being out of place and out of order or separated. And how even like one gold foil out of place like would throw him into a tantrum. And now we're seeing everything being separated and falling apart around him. And knowing Xie Lian has been like this, it just adds to his character just being completely obliterated by it all. So that's fun. Yay! I'll be honest, these 2 weeks have not been bad. I've not been looking forward to these chapters because things have been bad, but there's a part of me that knows it's not over yet, so yay. I do want to talk about the Manhwa before we start. I do want to talk about the Manhwa and go through it. Star Ember, chapter 96 of the Manhwa. Oh my God, I freaking love the way Star Ember draws Qirong and Lan Chanchu. Wonderful. I really like the color combinations in these chapters. There's a lot of like Lan Chanchu has the reds and oranges, and WuXiang, or not WuXiang, I can't call him WuXiang, but Qirong has like a little bit of red undertone as well, but also like the green robes, the green fingernail polish. Love. And then he has like the green eyes, and he looks kind of like Xie Lian. I like that he looks kind of like Xie Lian, but not like Xie Lian. He doesn't look like a carbon copy of Xie Lian. He does look different, but he has like a little tight, like his top knot's like a little ponytail. It's super cute. I love Qirong like that. But Lan Chanchu accusing him of killing Anla, and then him standing out. I like that Qirong's like coat has like the fur trim, but it's probably like faux fur. And he's got like the Flavor Flav gold medallion. It's like, I just love the outfit. It looks so good. And he has like the red underneath it, like the burnt orange, burnt red. It's great. And then Lan Chanchu. This bottom picture of Lan Chanchu almost makes it look like he has lipstick on, but it's his gums. They're just like red. As Qirong's like, well, of course you'd believe that Anla, you know, just died of an illness. I like the composition here where you have Lan Chanchu and Qi-Rong just like arguing back and forth, and there's the prostrating statue of Xie Lian in the middle of them, and then Xie Lian and WuXiang are like just standing there like, what do we do in this moment? What do we do? And then I just love how Star Ember draws Qi-Rong like licking the blood off of his hand. I love how Star Ember draws Qi-Rong. He looks really good there. It's like he's too pretty to be a trash king, but we'll accept it. We'll accept him being a trash king and being super pretty. We'll accept it. I think it's really cute. I like it. And then poor Lan Chanshu, him saying like that Anla was behind the rebellion against the Yongin royalty, including Lan Chanshu, and Lan Chanshu like just looking so distraught there. Like Qi-Rong like plays him like a fiddle. Like, it's going back to these chapters, these seemed like such tense times and such tense revelations. I'm like, God, this is so simplistic compared to what we're dealing with now. And then Xie Lian's like, wait a minute, I gotta clear the air. He doesn't want Lan Chanshu to feel bad, right? And then yeah, Qi-Rong like getting himself all put back together and everything. Again, with his little pointy shark teeth. And he's like has Xie Lian's facial structure, but he looks a little bit different. I like that his eyes are really big and green, but they're not doughy like Xie Lian's, right? And then we get the flashback where we kind of see who we think is Anla. And then we see Xie Lian showing up. And they get out right as Xie Lian shows up to take their place and make it look like he killed the king, right? And then seeing Lan Chanshu grip his fist and like clench it and saying, I heard you nailed your master inside a coffin too. Which there's been so many coffins and graves in this story that it's hard to keep track of. But we know that Xie Lian was in the coffin during the Blackwater incident, but that's the only, we've not gone back to the coffin incident with Lan Chanshu. However, there is some interesting things pointed out in this chapter that I think will relate to this volume and perhaps the next volume. And that is, one, we get the thing about the coffin that Qi-Rong brings up again. Like, oh, you nailed your master to the inside of a coffin. Now, him being nailed to the inside of a coffin, how'd he get out? We don't know. Especially, Xie Lian can't die, but what does that mean? How long was he there? We don't know for sure yet. And then Lan Chanshu has this just like innocent look in his eyes, like, you're lying. Like, and then he looks to Xie Lian like, if this was true, why didn't you say anything about me nailing to the coffin? Like, why didn't you say anything? Why did you go along with me being there and not, like, be mad at me, And Xie Lian at this point realizes, as we're finding out in these chapters, there's no point for him being mad. There's no point with him holding grudges. He just lets it go. It's as Jinx Monsoon would say, water off a duck's back. And Xie Lian, I like that Star Ember does the little expression here, and she puts the little thing that says pained, like by his face. It's just like a pain gesture. I'm like, glad, as if we didn't know Xie Lian was in. Star Ember has to put the word pained by Xie Lian's face because it's so beautiful. You can't tell if it's in pain or not. And then I love that Qi-Rong, or not Qi-Rong, but WuXiang activates like Cinderella abilities. Like WuXiang like puts his hand on Xie Lian's back, and like Cinderella, he like bursts into his regular robes. I'm like, as only Star Ember can do. And then I really like Qi-Rong's expression here, where he's like, what? Like, he looks around, he didn't realize it was Xie Lian that was standing there, and he's like, wait, what? And he has that kind of smile, like, what? Like that fake smile that he's like upset and doesn't want to show it. And then yes, Xie Lian, like WuXiang uses Cinderella magic and Xie Lian's in the robes, saying, and now this is the part I wanted to bring up. At that time, I had just been demoted for the second time. I was resentful and made a huge mistake. So in the timeline, there was 100 years between Banyu, which was not very long ago in the grand scheme of things, 100 years between Banyu, and I'll probably have to do a timeline at the end of this discussion for this set of chapters to back it up a little bit. But there was 100 years between Banyu and the Yongin festival, like the Bloody Guild, the Gilded Banquet. And then before that, Xie Lian says, I had just been demoted for the second time. So right around that time, and maybe we talked about this before months ago with previous volumes, but I'd forgotten. But before the Gilded Banquet, before the whole function incident, we have the idea that he had just been demoted the second time. His second ascension had just occurred. and his second descension had just occurred, and Xie Lian was in a very bad state. So that helps to understand if Xie Lian was in a bad state after that demotion, and then the whole thing at Yang'an happened, that he probably was like, oh, Yang'an, I'll try to start fresh and start anew, and look, it's the royal family of the country that overthrew my own, but you know what? I'll just start anew. It'll be fine. Everything will be right as rain. And then the coup happens and Xie Lian's like, nope, nothing's changed. Everything's still painful. And then he gets nailed inside of a coffin and just kind of like, well, I guess I get what I deserve. It sucks, y'all. It sucks to be here right now. To be in Xie Lian's place. And so then I like that Qirong's face when he realizes that Xie Lian is like you just see that look in his eyes like, oh my God, it's you. It's you. He says, look like you had a good life all these years, which is such an insult coming from Xie Lian being like, well, I've lived through hell, but you're doing great, cousin. How's it going? Oh my God. And then yes, Qirong's like, your highness, cousin. And he's like pointing at him. And there's this like manic expression on Qirong's face. I love that he has this manic expression where he's just like, oh my God. Like you can just see Cousin Crown Prince like coming out of his face. It's amazing. And WuXiang's in the background like, I am this close from killing him. We're nearing it. But then I really love the expression that he has here. Like in this, like Lanchan, she was like holding his head in his hands, like having a mental breakdown. And Xie Lian's just like, welp, what else is new in my life? And Qirong is just like, oh my gosh, like, hey cousin, oh my gosh, like my sweet cousin. Like he's just like the way Starrenberg draws his little laughing face. It's cute. I don't know how else to describe it. And then like he has this little forked tongue out, his little triangular tongue where he's like, me. Like he could probably tie a cherry stem really well with that triangular tongue. And he's just like, this is too entertaining. Like I love the way Qirong is drawn. He looks so great. I want Starrenberg to keep drawing him forever, please. And then right at the end, just as he starts to get a little too much, WuXiang's like, nope, yoink. Like lifts him up. I love that Qirong is only here for the perfect amount of time. He's here just long enough to make us be like, okay, it's time for you to go. And then WuXiang or somebody else just yoinks and whooshes him away. Oh my God. I freaking love it. It's great. So yeah, this Manhwa chapter was really good, but I thought about talking about it at the end of this discussion because I do want to do kind of a little timeline to see where we're at with some things, but we'll save that for after this chapter set because I was like, we may have to go, it's chapters 187 through 189, 201 to 236. I'm like, we could probably do like a little timeline afterwards if I remember to. Hopefully I do. But yeah. I was really sad in the last chapter set, and I got pretty emotional. I was like, this volume is gonna break me. It's really close to, and I'm like, The only thing exciting is like Bai WuXiang. I'm like, what is he gonna do? Is he gonna make a deal with the devil with Xie Lian? How's that gonna work? I don't know, y'all, but I'm really excited to see what ends up happening. So we're not gonna waste any more time. I'm gonna eat the rest of this little matcha Pocky stick. Seemed appropriate. Since we're talking about Qirong. But we're going to start chapters 187, 29 of Heaven Official's Blessing. And we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Chapter 187, Cold White Ghost, Warm Words Confounding the Crowned Prince. In the dark night, both Xie Lian's pupils instantly shrank to 2 extremely small dots. It's you, the white no-face. Hairs on Xie Lian's neck rose, and he leapt to his feet, grabbing for his sword. But there was nothing. And only then did he remember, he pawned all his swords. Pawned. That's the word I was looking for. Last week I was like, what's that word? Thrift? Trade? Pawn. Even that branch he took for a weapon earlier was broken by WuXiang, which meant he was facing this creature with neither spiritual power nor weapons. A few years ago when Shanla fell, the white no-face disappeared from the world. Xie Lian never bothered to search for him, and never thought of anything searching for him, only praying that he would so soundlessly never appear again. Yet who knew this creature would suddenly appear before him? The white cloth figure approached languidly. Xie Lian felt a sudden chill and couldn't help but back away a couple steps, yet he immediately snapped to. There was no backing away. Even fleeing was pointless. He cried out, "What do you want?" The white no-face didn't answer, and continued to come even closer with his hands at his sides. Xie Lian was shaking from his feet to his hands. Even the white puffs of air from his lips seemed to be trembling. He forced himself to recall the jeers, the indifference, and the mocking laughter of those 30-some heavenly officials, and WuXiang, who turned his face away. All of a sudden, he forgot his fears as he shouted and struck out with a hand chop. However, before his hand even chopped, there was excruciating pain. The other party actually predicted Xie Lian's move and was a step faster, flashing behind his back and kicking the hollow of his knee. It was too fast. Xie Lian's knees dropped heavily to the ground, and only then did a terrifying thought enter his mind. The movement was faster than he had thought. The next moment, Xie Lian felt something even more horrifying. A cold hand with its fingers stretched open was pressed over his skull. He started screaming. That hand had only used a bit of strength, and Xie Lian's entire body was pulled up by the head. Xie Lian had no doubt that based on the creature's strength, should his fingers curl in, he could smash his skull and his head would turn into smeared bloody flesh smushed between bones. He also had no doubt the next thing the white no-face planned to do was exactly that. Xie Lian breathed in harshly, thinking he was dead for sure, and he squeezed his eyes shut. Yet unexpectedly, the creature had no intention of exerting any more force, and withdrew its murderous intent and sighed softly. The sound of his soft sigh lasted for a while, and the other party showed no sign of moving. In the dead silence, Xie Lian reopened his eyes little by little. Ghost fires filled the air, and they were dancing in wild joy. Each of the balls of flame were watching the show, cackling as the spirits of the deceased laughed. However, most of the ghost fires seemed to be stunned by something, not daring to approach the two. A ball of ghost fire with flames that were abnormally bright was hanging above them, using its own flames to attack the one behind Xie Lian again and again. Oh my God, WuXiang's trying to attack him! No one could tell what it was doing, but no matter how one looked at it, it was like an insect fighting a tree. Oh, he's been by Xie Lian's side the whole time, trying to protect him. Then Xie Lian's body froze abruptly. The white no-face had hugged him. Xie Lian knelt in a slump while he was encircled by a pair of cold but powerful arms and pulled into a lifeless embrace. Without knowing when, white no-face had also sat down with him. He murmured, "So sad, so sad. Your Highness, look at yourself. Look what they've done to you." Oh my God! It is Ursula! Oh shit! Oh no! He murmured softly as he caressed Xie Lian's head, his hands gentle and merciful, like he was petting a wounded puppy or a child who was about to pass away from a severe illness. Under the moonlight, the smiling face of that cry-smiling mask was hidden in the darkness, revealing only the half that was crying, seeming like it was genuinely shedding tears of grief for Xie Lian. Oh, the visual! Oh my God! Through his gesture, Xie Lian actually felt a peculiar kind of loving compassion, just as if he was in the embrace of a best friend or a familiar family member. His shivering body miraculously became warmer. But he's a ghost. He had never thought that in such a state, the one who would give him compassion and warmth would be this strange creature. From deep in Xie Lian's throat came waves of suppressed sobs, shaking harder and harder. That ball of ghost fire flew to his heart, looking as if it wanted to warm him, but it wasn't confident that it could help chase away the cold, so it didn't press close. Oh my God! Oh my God! White No-Face helped clean the mud off his person and begged, "Come to my side." Xie Lian's voice trembled. Before he finished his words, his hand suddenly flashed out and went straight for the white no-face's mask. His attack was successful, and the mask was smacked high into the air. Xie Lian himself had leapt and flipped meters away, the terror from earlier completely gone. He said darkly in a rage, "Who's going to your side, you monster?" That tragically pale, cry-smiling mask fell to the ground, and all the ghost fires in the air seemed to be stupefied. They suddenly lost order, dancing madly without stopping, shrieking without a sound. The white no-face, on the other hand, covered his face and started chuckling softly. That laugh was making all of Xie Lian's hairs stand. "What are you laughing about?" White no-face humped softly. "Oh, you'll come to my side one day." His tone was confident. Xie Lian didn't understand what he meant, and he said in disbelief, What side is your side? You destroyed Shanla. You still want me to go over to your side? Are you crazy? I think you're sick in the head." He didn't know how to cuss at others, and even in extreme rage, he only knew how to say those words. Otherwise, He would have used the words most vicious, most vengeful words to curse that creature. The white no-face laughed out loud, and with his hand covering his face, he held his head tall. You will come. In this world, no one but me will truly understand you, and no one but me will forever stay by your side. Okay. Xie Lian felt chills and tried to argue. Get out of here. Enough with your arrogant nonsense. How could there be no one just because you said so? A ball of ghost fire flew to his side and moved up and down like it was nodding in agreement. However, wicked wisps like it were all around, so Xie Lian didn't notice this particular one. Oh my god, WuXiang! We're going to talk about WuXiang by WuXiang, but WuXiang is just like, that's right, you tell him, Xie Lian. Oh my god, WuXiang! I want him to kick Bai WuXiang's ass so bad in the present. Come on now. Before him, White No-Face said warmly, oh, is there someone? Maybe there were people in the past, but do you think there'd still be from now on? What do you mean? What are you hinting at? The White No-Face didn't answer, and he only sneered and turned around, looking like he was about to drift away. He said softly, I'll wait for you here, Your Highness. As if Xie Lian would let him go, just like that. Wait, don't go! What did you do to them? Did you touch my parents and Feng Xin? He chased after him, reaching his arms out to grab the silhouette of the white-clothed man. Yet unexpectedly, the other party lightly swept his sleeve and grabbed a ball of ghost fire. He didn't particularly aim to attack Xie Lian, but Xie Lian sensed a horrifying force coming at him, and his entire person was thrown high into the air, slamming against a tree. A large crack, and the giant tree, with the width of 2 grown men, split and fell by his collision. If this was before, Xie Lian wouldn't have even frowned if he should break 10 trees. But his body was mortal now, and with such a crash, it felt like his bones fell apart, and he fell heavily to the ground, losing consciousness. The final moment, as he closed his eyes, Xie Lian seemed to have seen that white-cloth figure reach out a hand. He held within his palm a blazing ghost fire. Spirit, tell me, what is your name? How interesting. When he came to, everything was gone. Xie Lian was covered with the astringence of blood from his chest to his mouth, and his head spun for a good while before he suddenly stumbled to crawl up. He mothered, Father, Mother, Feng Xin! He remembered everything that happened before he passed out, and he didn't waste a single second. He ran like mad for tens of miles, and finally, 20-some days after he left with the satchel on his back, he returned to the king and the others' hiding place in the deep night. Xie Lian was panicking the entire way, extremely anxious, scared the White No-Face had already done something to his friend and family. The moment he returned to that dilapidated cottage, he shoved the door open and blurted out before even catching his breath, Mother! Father! Feng Xin! Thank goodness the house didn't look as tragic as he imagined, and nothing was out of place either, still looking exactly the same as he had left. Xie Lian ran madly, with his body covered in injuries, his throat so dry it was going to smoke. He relaxed a little, only then did he swallow before continuing deeper into the house. Feng Xin, where are you guys? He pushed a door open and his voice died in his throat. Feng Xin was inside, and when he saw Xie Lian had come back, he exclaimed in amazement, Your Highness, why are you back? However, Xie Lian wasn't looking at him, but was staring intently at the one facing Feng Xin. Before Feng Xin stood a black-clad man. It was WuXiang. Why are we not done with this? What? No! No! WuXiang turned his head back and saw Xie Lian. He pressed his lips, looking grim. Feng Xin went around him and came over to greet Xie Lian. Didn't you go to train? How was it? I thought you'd be gone for at least several months. Did you come back so soon because you'd made excellent progress? Xie Lian stared at WuXiang. Where is father and mother? Sleeping in the room. They've already gone to rest, Feng Xin said. Why are your clothes so dirty? What's with the cuts on your face? Who fought with you? Xie Lian didn't answer. Only when he heard his parents were fine did he completely relax, and he turned to WuXiang. Why are you here? WuXiang didn't speak, and Feng Xin replied, He came to deliver something. What? WuXiang raised his hand lightly, pointing to the side. What he was pointing to were several clean sacks, probably with rice or grain in them. Seeing Xie Lian so quiet, WuXiang said softly, I heard you were needing medicine. I'll think of a way to get some later. All right, Feng Xin said. I'll say my thanks then. We do need all this stuff right now. Heavenly officials can't give mortals things privately, so you be careful too. Then he shuffled to Xie Lian's side and whispered, I'm pretty surprised too that he'd actually come back to help. I'm the one who judged him wrong in any case. Xie Lian, however, suddenly spoke up. We don't need it. WuXiang's expression turned ashen for a moment. He clenched his fists. Function was puzzled. What don't we need? Xie Lian enunciated slowly. I don't need your help. I also don't want any of your stuff. Please leave. When he heard the words, please leave, WuXiang's face became even more ashen. Function also knows something was wrong and asked, just what is going on? WuXiang bowed his head. I'm sorry. Having known WuXiang for so many years, this was the first time they heard him say those words, and it was also the first time he apologized genuinely. But Xie Lian had no more mind to be surprised. Please leave. He was still unable to control his emotions, and he grabbed those sacks and started throwing them at WuXiang. White rice spilled to the ground, and WuXiang was thrown into a distraught state. He only raised an arm to block, but he still held back. Function held Xie Lian down and was alarmed. Your Highness, what is going on? What did he do? What didn't you go cultivate? Just what exactly happened? Having been held down, Xie Lian said with red eyes, why don't you go ask him? I did go train, but ask him why I've just returned. It was too noisy out, and the queen, who was sleeping in the back rooms, was shaken awake. She emerged after pulling on an outer robe. My son, have you returned? What happened to you? Function quickly said, nothing, your majesty. Please go back in. Then he forcefully pushed her back and closed the door, and then he demanded, what did you do, WuXiang? Just what exactly did you do? Your Highness, did the cuts on your face come from him? Xie Lian's breathing was growing harsher and more turbulent, and he couldn't force a word out. WuXiang exclaimed, it wasn't me. I didn't hit His Highness. I only asked him to leave. Other than that, I didn't say anything harsh, and I didn't move against him. They were determined to take over that spiritual land, and under those circumstances, if you didn't leave, nothing would end. You! After having exchanged so many words, Function finally got the gist of what had transpired. He widened his eyes and pointed at WuXiang, unable to speak. A moment later, he bent down and grabbed a sack and flung it over, roaring, Scram! 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 WuXiang was hit in the face by the sacks of rice he had brought and backed away 2 steps. All 3 of them in the house were panting harshly. Function cried, I was wondering why you suddenly had a change of heart. I can't fucking believe this. Holy shit. Don't let me see you ever again. WuXiang exclaimed with a cracked voice, yes, I was wrong. I admit it, and I apologize. But I wanted to solve all the current problems first before we think about anything else. Your parents and my mother, the 3 of us. Who knows how long we'd have to struggle in the mud. If I went back first, maybe there'd still be a chance. Function cussed, all fucking bullshit. Stop your bullshit. No one wants to hear your excuses. Scram, 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 scram. WuXiang tried again. If you put yourself in my shoes. Function cut him off. I told you to stop your bullshit. I'm not listening. I just know that even in your shoes, I wouldn't have done the same thing as you. There's no need to put myself in your shoes because you're nothing more than a traitor. WuXiang's face was now green, and he took a step forward. When His Highness was in a tight spot, wasn't he forced to commit robbery too? Why, when it comes to me, can't you accept it? Robbery? Who committed robbery? His Highness committed robbery? What shit are you fucking saying? Xie Lian stopped breathing. Watching Function's raging face gradually changing to shock, WuXiang finally realized something was wrong. And he turned to Xie Lian hesitatingly. You didn't. He had never expected that Xie Lian hadn't told Function about that incident. Xie Lian had gone mad, and he grabbed a random object by his hand, and he started chasing WuXiang out. WuXiang also realized that he might have screwed up, and he didn't dare to speak, even having been hit a few times. Yet when he ran out the door and looked back, the thing Xie Lian was using to chase him was a broom! And his face instantly darkened. Did you have to taunt me like this? Xie Lian cried brokenly, get out of here! Xie Lian swung fist, blew out sharp gales, and WuXiang was hit, barely dodging the brunt of the attack, a thin, bloody cut appearing on his cheek. He reached out and touched the cut, looked at the blood on his hand, his expression unreadable. Fine, I'm leaving. Xie Lian was shaking all over, and he was bent over deeply at the waist. WuXiang took a few steps forwards and still placed the rice sacks on the ground in the end. I'm really leaving. Xie Lian whipped his head up. When WuXiang saw his eyes, he swallowed. Not hanging around any longer, he swept his sleeves and left. Only then did the thoroughly stunned Feng-Shen come out running. Your Highness, what is this? He's fucking lying, right? What robbery? Don't ask any more. Please, Feng-Shen, I beg you, please don't ask any more. No, of course I don't believe it. I just want to know what really happened. Xie Lian screamed and covered his ears, escaping back into the cottage. He locked himself in his room. Feng-Shen was completely convinced that he would never do such a thing, but that was precisely why this had become the worst-case scenario. Xie Lian wanted to just run away, escape to somewhere where no one knew him. But when he remembered that white no-face and what he'd said, he didn't dare go too far either, and could only shut himself inside his room. No matter how Feng-Shen and the Queen called for him, he refused to emerge. It took 2 days before Xie Lian felt calmer, and when Feng-Shen came to knock again, he silently opened the door. Feng-Shen was holding a plate and stood there. Her Majesty made you this during the day today and exhorted that I'd absolutely bring this to you. The things on that plate were something green and purple, a horrifying sight. Feng-Shen continued, if your Highness thinks your life might be in danger, I can finish this for you. I won't tell Her Majesty. Xie Lian could tell that Feng-Shen really wanted to prod and ask what the robbery was about, but was also scared that Xie Lian might lock himself up again. And so he forced it down and pretended the incident never happened. There was nothing to question, pretending to be at ease. However, he wasn't good at joking, and the jokes he made were all dry, making things even more awkward. To be honest, the taste of his mother's cooking really was quite terrifying, and the more time she entered the kitchen, the more effort she put in, the more astray the path of her progress. Xie Lian had also never cooked, but the meals he made didn't taste too bad. Oh, by comparison! It seemed it could only be explained by way of natural talent. Nevertheless, Xie Lian still took the plate and sat by the table to eat it honestly. Either way, he couldn't taste whatever he ate now. At least there was one consoling thing in all of this. While he was sure that he was done for and the king had overheard that night based on how things were the past few days, it didn't look like the king and queen knew about the robbery incident. Otherwise, by the king's temperament, he would have started yelling at him already. Feng-Shen would never tell them either, so Xie Lian could relax for now. As he was thinking this, Feng-Shen suddenly rose to his feet and Xie Lian snapped out of it. What are you doing? He grabbed his bow and said, it's time for me to go busking. I'll go with you. Forget it, you rest a bit more. Although Feng-Shen didn't ask any more questions, Xie Lian was still feeling uncomfortable all over, as if now that Feng-Shen had learned such a thing, there was something between them that could never go back. Every word and every look Feng-Shen gave him seemed to have taken on a different meaning, worthy of deeper interpretation. Xie Lian shook his head and sighed, let me be honest with you, I don't have the mind to cultivate right now. Feng-Shen had expected this too, and he bowed his head, not knowing what to say. Xie Lian continued, so if that's the case, instead of rotting inside this house, I might as well go busk too, so I could at least earn some money, so at least he wouldn't be an invalid. Yet for some reason, he couldn't bring himself to say the last 2 words. Perhaps it was because he really felt like he was already an invalid, so he didn't dare reveal it so easily. Feng-Shen was still a little worried. I can do it on my own too, Your Highness. You've only had 1 meal in the past 2 days. Why don't you rest for a few more days? The more he insisted, the more Xie Lian was anxious to prove himself, and he turned to look in the mirror. It's fine, I'll just clean myself up and... He was going to tidy himself up at first, so at least he wouldn't look like a disheveled, crazy beggar, yet unexpectedly he saw an exceedingly horrifying image reflected in the mirror. The him in the mirror didn't have a face, because in his reflection, what was on his face was a half-crying, half-smiling mask. Oh my God! Oh, that was 1 chapter! That was 1 chapter! That was 1 chapter! Oh, shit. On chapter 188, the cold white ghost, warm words confounding the crown prince too. Xie Lian screamed and Feng-Shen jumped in surprise. What is it? It's him! Xie Lian pointed at the mirror's face pale. It's him! What is with you? Feng-Shen followed his arm and looked in the mirror. A good moment later, he turned back bewildered. Xie Lian was terrified to the bone. He gripped him hard, squeezing out the only few words with great difficulty. My face! You don't see it! The thing on my face! Feng-Shen stared at his face and sighed. Oh, Xie Lian was still confused why there wasn't a reaction from him. Function said, "Your Highness, have you finally noticed there are cuts on your face?" It was as if Xie Lian had been plunged into an ice cellar. Why? How could this happen? Why would Function say that? Could it be that Function couldn't see the mask on his face in the mirror at all? Xie Lian blurted, "You don't see it, there's something on my face." "What thing? What exactly do you mean? I don't see anything." Xie Lian looked at the mirror again. "It's impossible, But when he looked back, again this time, the mask on his face had disappeared, and what was reflecting was the panicking face of his. There were bruises and crisscrossing cuts all over his face, looking lost and disturbed, exceedingly unkempt, like a small worker who had been beaten to a pulp by a wealthy master. Xie Lian was stunned in spite of himself and probed the inside of his cheek, wondering inwardly, "Is this me?" Just then he heard Function speak. "Your Highness, are you too tired, perhaps? Or are you just exhausted from being angry at that stinking bastard? Listen to me. Don't go out in the next few days. Just take it easy." Xie Lian finally snapped out of it, and saw Function was about to leave the door with the bow on his back, dangling a stool in his hand. He explained hastily, "No, Function pushed the door while looking back. "Is there anything else?" The words had made it to his lips, but he forcefully swallowed them down, because a strange thought suddenly appeared in his mind. Life now was already very difficult. If he told Function the white no-face could be coming back to harass them, what would Function do? Function was also fairly traumatized by the white no-face. What would he do? Would he think of backing away and leave like WuXiang? Just as his imagination was running wild, Function had already left. Xie Lian snapped back with the sound of the door closing, and he could only shrink back to bed and wrap himself in blankets, planning to take another nap. Suddenly, he smelled something foul. Xie Lian crawled up. At first he thought it was the queen cooking again, or some rat that had died in the corner, so he got up to check. He looked all over, but in the end he discovered that the source of the foul was actually himself. Only then did Xie Lian remember that it had been 2 weeks since he last washed or changed, so of course he'd smell. Xie Lian held his breath, a wave of self-hatred crashing through him. Just thinking that both his parents and Function must have noticed but didn't bother to tell him made him feel another wave of embarrassment. He sneakily opened the door and looked around. There wasn't anyone outside, so he found himself a set of fresh clothing and planned to boil some water for a bath. After much struggle, he finally soaked in the bathtub at last. He sank himself into the water, holding his breath until he was suffocating, only resurfacing when he felt like he was going to pass out. Then he rubbed his face roughly. After wiping himself down, Xie Lian reached out to grab for his clothes. He was absent-mindedly shaking out his robes and was just about to put them on when suddenly he noticed something wrong. Those weren't his clothes at all, but rather the white no-face's tragically blanched funeral garb with expansive sleeves. Xie Lian felt the hot water was soaking in turn and turned it into an icy pond all of a sudden, the hair standing on end. He cried, Who did this? Who changed out his clothes in secret while he wasn't paying attention?" He jumped out, still wet and dripping, and knocked the bathtub over. A large splash, and instantly the entire cottage was flooded with bath water, startling both the king and queen who were in the next room. The queen supported the king as they entered to see, and Xie Lian was sprawled on the ground naked, the floor flooded with water. In her shock, she came rushing towards him to hug him. "My son, what's happened to you?" Xie Lian was wet and dripping, his hair strewn, and he looked up, hugging her back. "Mom, a ghost! There's a ghost clinging to me! He's constantly following me!" His appearance was no different than the one who had lost his mind. And the queen couldn't take it anymore as she wept in anguish and held her son. The king also watched Xie Lian dumbfoundedly, a man of 40-something looking like he was now over 60. The frigid air of winter jolted Xie Lian, and he pointed. "The clothes! Look at the clothes!" However, when he looked at those clothes again, how was it the funeral garb at all? Was it not just his white cultivation robes? Oh my God! Xie Lian was suddenly filled with rage, and he slammed a fist on the wooden tub, roaring, "Just what do you want? Why are you playing with me?" The queen forced back her tears and hugged him. "My son, don't be angry. Just put on some clothes first. Put them on. Don't catch cold." That day, Function also came back really late. Exhaustion was written on his face, much more than before. Xie Lian had been waiting for him for a long time, and he spoke impatiently. "Function, I have something very important to tell you." That creature White No-Face was too bizarrely powerful. Even if he told Fengshen, it would be pointless to set up guard beforehand. Nevertheless, after much thinking, he still believed that something like this shouldn't be kept secret from Fengshen, so he decided to tell him the truth. Unexpectedly, Fengshen didn't immediately ask him what it was and only said, "Oh, good. I've got something I want to say to you, too." Oh my God, no. Xie Lian thought the matter with White No-Face was more important, and anything else urgent should come after, but after he sat down at the table, he asked, "Well, you go first. What is it?" Fengshen hesitated for a moment and said, "Your Highness, you go first." Xie Lian didn't have the mind to be courteous anymore and whispered, "Fengshen, you must be absolutely careful. The White No-Face has come back." Fengshen's expression instantly changed. "The White No-Face has returned. Why would you say that? Did you see it?" "Yes, I saw it." That's not right. Why would it be seen by you? Why are you still here all fine after having seen it?" Xie Lian buried his face and said, "I don't know either. Not only did he kill me, he even hugged him and patted his head like a loving elder and beckoned him come to my side." After having listened to the strange encounters of the past few days, Fengshen's shock gradually faded away, and it was replaced by confusion. Just what is he thinking? Either way, he must not have any good intentions, and he also seems to be following me everywhere. Xie Lian said, "In any case, you must be careful. Help me remind my father and mother to be careful too, but don't frighten them." "All right," Fengshen said. "I won't go out for the next few days. The stuff that bastard gave us, it should last us for some time." It was quite embarrassing to say. When WuXiang left, he still left behind everything he brought over. Although Xie Lian lost control of himself at the time, flinging the stuff at him, saying he didn't need his stuff nor his help, after calming down, they picked up everything secretly in defeat. Xie Lian sighed and nodded. Then he said, "Oh, yes, what was it what you wanted to say to me?" "Oh." Having brought this up, Fengshen hesitated. After a pause, he opened his mouth and was surprisingly humming and hawing, scratching his head as he stammered out, "Actually, it's, Your Highness, do you have money on you or something that can be pawned?" Xie Lian had never thought he'd asked such a silly question at a time like this and was a little perplexed. "Why are you asking this?" Fengshen sweated as he replied boldly, "Oh, it's nothing. It's just, if you happen to have some, can you lend me some?" Xie Lian laughed bitterly. "Do you think I'd have any more?" Fengshen sighed too. "I thought so." Xie Lian gave it some thought and said, "But didn't I gift you that golden belt before?" Fengshen mumbled, "That's not enough. Far from it." Xie Lian was shocked. "Fengshen, what exactly have you done out there? How can a golden belt not be enough? Do you owe someone money for beating someone up? Tell me." Fengshen snapped out of it and quickly said, "Oh no, don't take this to heart. I was only asking." After asking over and over, Fengshen still swore everything was fine, and Xie Lian said wordly, "Well, if there's anything, you have to tell me and we can think of a solution together." "And don't worry about me," Fengshen said. "No solution will just fall from the sky. Your Highness, you just focus on solving your problems." When he brought it up, Xie Lian's heart sank. Just as he expected, in all the days that followed, that creature harassed him unceasingly and wouldn't leave him alone. Oh, talk about Fengshen. Xie Lian would always see that cry-smiling mask or that white silhouette in many unsuspecting places. Sometimes it'd be at the headboard in the deep night. Sometimes it'd be a reflection in the water. Sometimes it'd be at the other side of the door when he opened said door. And sometimes it'd even be standing right behind Fengshen. That is freaking terrifying! White No-Face seemed to be scaring him as entertainment, and purposefully let him be the only one who could see. Every time when Xie Lian couldn't take it anymore and pointed at him screaming, all the others would rush over to look and he'd disappear. Xie Lian had been passing days like this in shaken agitation, so bitter he wished he could catch that creature and chop it into 8 pieces. 8 volumes, 8 pieces. But he couldn't even manage to step on the other's shadow. Inevitably, his days and nights became flipped and both his heart and body exhausted. One day he jolted awake in the middle of the night and felt irrepressibly thirsty. Thinking that he hadn't drank anything properly the entire day, he crawled up ready to go get some water to drink. However, from the outside of the room creeped faint voices and weak candlelight. Xie Lian was startled and instantly hid behind the door, his heart thumping. Who could it be? If it's father, mother, and Fengshen, why would they sneak around like this? Yet who knew? The ones sneaking around really were his father, mother, and Fengshen. Fengshen's voice was extremely hushed. His Highness is resting now, right? The Queen's voice also whispered, he's asleep now. Finally, the king said, don't wake him too early tomorrow. Let him sleep some more. Those words made Xie Lian's heart squeeze. Then soon after, he heard the queen say, "If this keeps up, when will my son ever get better?" Xie Lian could feel something amiss with those words, and just then Feng Shen said with a quiet voice, "He's only like this because he's overworked. Too much has happened recently. Will your majesties also keep a closer eye on him? And if there's anything off with his highness, please do let me know as soon as possible, but don't let him know. Also, don't say anything that would provoke him." Xie Lian eavesdropped. Hiding behind the door, his mind going blank, waves of blood rushed up to his brain. What did this mean? What did they mean? He roared internally, "I'm not crazy. I didn't lie. I was telling the truth." Xie Lian raised his hand and pang, crashed the door open. All three inside the room were startled and Feng Shen rose to his feet. "Oh, your highness, why aren't you asleep?" Xie Lian was furious. "You don't believe me?" Feng Shen was taken back. "Well, of course I believe you." "You," Xie Lian cut him off. "Then what did you mean by those words just now? Are you saying everything I saw were all hallucinations, or I'm just delusional?" The king and queen wanted to intercept, and Xie Lian instantly said, "Don't speak. You guys don't understand anything." "No," Feng Shen exclaimed. "I believe you, your highness. You've been overworked too, and that's also the truth." Xie Lian looked at him and didn't speak, but somewhere in his heart there were chilling winds blowing in. He believed that overall, Feng Shen still believed in him, at least 80%. But it wasn't complete trust. After all, how Xie Lian passed his recent days really were too mental. If it was any other outsider looking in, they would have had no doubt determined him to be a madman. So what right did he have to demand anyone trust him completely? But it shouldn't be like this. The Feng Shen of the past would have had absolute faith in him no matter what. Even if there was only 20% doubt, it was still unbearable. Xie Lian was filled with rage and resentment, and he couldn't tell who it was directed at. To the white no-face, to Feng Shen, to everyone, or to himself. He didn't speak a word. He turned and went out the door, and Feng Shen chased after him. "Your highness, where are you going?" Xie Lian forced himself to be calm. "Don't mind me. Don't follow me. Go back." "No, but where are you going? I'll go with you," Feng Shen said. Xie Lian made up his mind and started running suddenly, wildly. Feng Shen wasn't as fast as him and was soon left far behind. He could only shout after him. The king and queen both came out and started shouting for him too, but Xie Lian pretended not to hear and ran faster. He had no choice but to make the first attack. If White No-Face planned to kill Xie Lian or Feng Shen or his parents, it would be a piece of cake. Yet he just wouldn't kill and would instead play him like a toy, making a meal of him. Xie Lian ran as he roared into the black night. "Come the hell out, you shady gutter monster! Get the hell out, you gutter slut!" The White No-Face was coming strictly for him, so he believed that White No-Face would follow him for sure. However, after cursing the world with insufficient vocabulary, there was none of the usual sneers drifting from unexpected shadowed corners, nor did any figures appear languidly behind his back, putting an unsuspecting hand on his head. After running madly for a number of miles, Xie Lian finally exhausted his strength, and he bent deeply at the waist, supporting himself with his hands on his knees, panting harshly, his chest and throat flooded with the taste of rusted iron. A good while later, he suddenly whipped up and continued forward, saying under his breath, "So you want to drag this out with me? Fine, we'll drag this out slowly." He walked by himself through deserted, barren fields, through old woods and deep mountains, for who knows how long, and the fog gradually started to thicken. All around were the blackened old trees flashing their claws, and they were all leaning forward, exceedingly pushed down, as if they were inviting him to step into a forbidden land of no return. Xie Lian could tell whatever was ahead wasn't going to be anything good, but it was unavoidable. Besides, he must put an end to this. So this would have come sooner or later. Thus, with a darkened expression, he continued forward. As he walked within the white fog, a row of something shimmering appeared like a glowing wall. Xie Lian had never seen anything like it, and he furrowed his brows slightly, stopping his breath. As for that wall, it was actually slowly pushing towards him. Xie Lian was tensed in alarm and broke off a branch, gripping in his hand at the ready. Only when that wall made it not 2 meters from him did he realize in bewilderment it wasn't a wall at all, but countless ghost fires. Because there were too many, from afar it looked like a blazing wall or a giant net. While the ghost fires were strange, they didn't emit any murderous intent, only drifted towards him silently, blocking him from continuing forward. Xie Lian tried going around them, but the ghost fires immediately changed direction and continued to block Xie Lian. At the same time, he heard many voices. "Don't go there. Don't go over. There are no good things ahead." Turn around. Don't continue to walk. Those voices were stoic and condensed like tides, giving him chills down his back. Xie Lian was surrounded and noticed within these ghost fires there was one ball of flames that was particularly bright and particularly silent. Although something like a ghost fire didn't have eyes, when he gazed at the ghost fire, he could almost sense a burning gaze staring at him. It seemed this ghost was the strongest among the ghost fires. All the other ghost fires were only following after it. Oh, it's WuXiang getting stronger. He's gathering troops. He's gathering all the ghost fires to him to get stronger. Oh my God. Oh, so he can keep Xie Lian safe. Oh my God. Do we still have one chapter left? Yes. Yes. Chapter 189. Cold white ghost. Warm words confounding the crown prince 3. Move, Xie Lian said coldly. The ghost fire didn't move. Why are you blocking my way? The ghost fire didn't answer, and the other little ghost fires only repeated, don't go there, nonstop. Xie Lian didn't want to bother with those things at all, so he stuck out his hand. He didn't disperse the spirits. His hand was only for breaking apart the blocking formation of the ghost fires, like waving away a band of fireflies or a school of goldfish. Xie Lian passed through quickly, wilted branches and broken leaves crackling under his steps. Yet when he looked back, the ghost fires had swiftly caught up to him, looking ready to form another wall. Xie Lian warned, don't follow me. The ball of the brightest and hottest ghost fire was flying at the very front, unheeding of his words. And Xie Lian raised his hand like he was going to strike again. He warns fiercely, keep following me and I might disperse your spirits. With a threat like this, many ghost fires became scared, fluttering and shriveling backing away. But the leading ghost fire only paused for a moment in the midair before it continued to trail behind him, keeping a distance of not 5 feet away. It made Xie Lian think that it was trying to tell him it doesn't matter if you disperse me. Or perhaps it knew Xie Lian wouldn't really hit it. A sudden, inexplicable anger filled Xie Lian. In the past, if he shouted, what little minions would dare continue their harassment? They would have disappeared in a flash with tails between their legs. Now, not only did people step all over him as they willed, even this tiny little ball of ghost fire wouldn't obey him, taking his threats for nothing. Xie Lian's eyes reddened from anger, and he mumbled, even a ghost like you is like this. You're all like this. Everyone's like this. It was a little funny to be so enraged by such a small thing. Yet at this moment, Xie Lian was genuinely filled with furious resentment. Unexpectedly, after he mumbled those words, the bowl of ghost fire seemed to have understood he was both angry and sad. And it stopped in midair, no longer moving forward. Leading those 100 little ghost fires, they backed away slowly. Not long after, they disappeared completely into the night. Damn it. Xie Lian blew out a breath and turned to continue forward. After some 700 to 800 feet, corners of the eaves faintly appeared within the beguiling fog ahead, like an old temple of the deep mountains. When Xie Lian approached and looked closer, his eye had widened. It was a Crown Prince temple. Of course, it was a broken-down temple of the Crown Prince. It had already suffered the pillage of thugs, the establishment plaque fallen to the ground broken in half. Xie Lian paused in front of the temple entrance for a moment. Then he lifted his feet and crossed over the broken establishment plaque and entered the temple. The divine statue in the Great Hall had also long since vanished, perhaps smashed or burnt or thrown into the sea. The altar was empty and desolate. Only the burnt base of the statue remained. On either side, the body in abyss, heart in paradise, were slashed some 30 times, like a beautiful woman whose face was cut by knives. No longer beautiful, only chillingly savage. Xie Lian kept his composure and sat down on the ground inside the great hall, waiting for the white no-face to appear. After one instant's time, a figure really did appear from within the beguiling fog outside the temple. However, the figure wasn't right. It wasn't as at ease as white no-face, and the sound of their steps was wrong too. Much too hurried. Not like the white no-face's silent creeping. So the one approaching must definitely not be the white no-face, nor anyone he knew. Then who could it be? Xie Lian was tense and alarmed, and only saw clearly the person and finally rushed into the temple of the Crown Prince. Unfortunately, the person who arrived didn't match any of his guesses at all. No matter how he studied him, he was only a passerby without any flaws. But Xie Lian still didn't relax his guard. Who knew if this could be the white no-face's disguise? In a wild, barren mountain within a broken-down temple to suddenly run into someone, Xie Lian was guarded against the other, and the other was also guarded against Xie Lian. After a moment later, he finally ventured to ask, "This Dao Zhang, do you know what this place is?" Xie Lian knitted his brows slightly and looked up. "You don't know what this place is? Then how'd you come here?" "I got lost," the man said. "I walked around and around, but I just can't seem to get out." Xie Lian knew that this wasn't getting lost at all. If this man wasn't White No-Face in disguise, then he was most likely lured in by something. "Don't go around anymore. You're not going to be able to get out." "Huh? What are you saying?" However, Xie Lian didn't respond anymore and continued his meditation. If he was lured in by the White No-Face, then panicking would be pointless. If he wouldn't let anyone go, then there was no point in trying to escape, so it'd be better if Xie Lian just waited quietly to see what he planned on doing. The man was also tired from running around, so he sat on the side to rest, the two at peace with each other. It didn't take long before another figure appeared from within the beguiling fog, entering the temple, and it was another confused traveler. Seeing there were people inside the temple, he quickly approached. "Hey, buddies, may I ask what place this is?" The two travelers started chatting, and a premonition started growing in Xie Lian's mind. Sure enough, it didn't take 2 hours before over 10 people came to the temple of the Crown Prince. One after the other. Men, women, seniors, children, all kinds. Some by themselves, some in groups of 2 or 3. Some were whole families, and most of them came because they were lost. The reasons they got lost were also innumerous and bizarre. Some were even just strolling down the city streets and they got lost on the way here. Exceedingly incredible. Inside this temple, Xie Lian even saw the street performer who was adamant in competing against him with the boulder shattering trick. He didn't look very good. It seemed the competition last time had injured him significantly. The two saw each other but didn't say a word and only nodded their heads. It was easy to see that they were all ordinary people, and they were all brought here into the deep mountains intentionally by the White No-Face. The alarm in Xie Lian's head was becoming louder and louder, but he didn't move. He dug out a cold steam bun and bit into it forcefully, chewed forcefully, and swallowed forcefully. He must store all of his energy in order to face a big battle that was surely coming. 4 hours later, the temple of the Crown Prince was bustling and bursting with lost people from inside out. Xie Lian had counted silently. There were about 100 of them. Not a single would be able to get out of these woods. When there was a crowd, there was a bustling noise, and everyone started chattering. "Did you also have been here for no reason? It reeks of evil. Why don't we go try and find a way out again? Let's go, let's go. I refuse to believe that with so many of us, not a single one would be able not to get out." But when Xie Lian, who was sitting in the corner, looked up, "It won't matter how much you walk, there is no exit." "Well, how come?" Xie Lian said bitterly, "Because you were all led here by a monster. You're all his toys. So why would he let you go so easily?" Within the crowd, there were some who thought he was exaggerating, some who thought he was mental, and some who thought he shouldn't be underestimated. "Well, who are you? What basis do you have to say such a thing? He seems to be the first one here. When I came here, he was already sitting here. Weird. Yeah, his face is covered too. Do you have any proof?" Xie Lian said quietly, "There is no proof. It doesn't matter if you all believe it or not. The monster certainly didn't lure you all here and invite you for a meal. I don't think I need to tell you all to be a little more careful." Just as he finished speaking, before anyone else responded, the sounds of rushing footsteps came from a far distance. Everyone else perked up. "Another one's coming!" There were immediately those who wanted to go out and check it too, but just as they crossed over the temple's threshold, they hastily slipped back, since what accompanied that running noise were waves of crazed screaming. The screaming voice didn't sound human at all, and everyone's face dropped, all backing in the temple. "What the heck could that be? It's not some beast, is it?" As that figure within the beguiling fog fast approached, Xie Lian narrowed his eyes. No, that is indeed a person. Only that person was running in their direction and howling deafeningly at the same time, his hands covering his face. Seeing he was about to run into the temple at any second, Xie Lian squeezed through the crowd and stood at the front to see what the situation was. Yet it was as if this man had no eyes, and crashed into the tree by the entrance of the Crown Prince Palace, and he bounced back a good meter and fell to the ground and passed out. The crowd was shocked, and each of them squeezed about, stretching their necks to see, and wondered anxiously, "What's with that man?" Some who were gutsier, including the street performer, were going to go and examine him, and Xie Lian called out, "Don't go near him." The people jumped at his sharp tone and said, "Well, then what do we do? Just let him lie there?" "I'll go take a look," Xie Lian said. "Well, then you be careful, yeah?" Xie Lian nodded and approached the tree slowly, crouching down. He was about to move the hand that was covering the man's face when the man suddenly jumped and let out 2 shrieking cries. That's right, 2 shrieking cries. And it was 2 sounds that went off at the same time. One came from his mouth and the other came from his face, on the face of a man that was another face, the human face disease. Goosebumps were instantly raised on Xie Lian's skin. His pupils shrank, and the crowd within the temple were also stupefied by the horrifying scene. After the man had jumped up, he dropped his hands and was about to charge to where the people were, but thankfully Xie Lian was quick with his hands and he struck out. The face disease victim was instantly sent flying meters away by his slap. Xie Lian then hastily backed away to shield the entrance of the temple, while the crowd behind him all exclaimed in panic and shock, "I thought the disease only appeared in the royal capital. So many died in the imperial city. Wasn't that disease extinguished? Well, it's not real. It can't be real. Is that really a face on his face?" What was even more horrifying was the next moment. All around came even more wailing, and over 10 wobbling figures came gathering towards the temple. There wasn't any need to look to know they were all face disease victims. Everyone yelled, "Everyone run, spread out, don't let them come close." But Xie Lian was like, "Don't spread out. Who knows how many more of them are in the woods? If there are any more of them outside, it'll all be over. Then what do? We can't be sitting ducks. Isn't that just waiting for death to come?" The branch Xie Lian broke off en route that had been hung on his waist. He pulled it out, wielding it like a sword. "Don't worry, they can't come here. Of course, I get to say whether they can come close." This was his domain, the hall of the crown prince. "You." Not waiting for anyone's questions, Xie Lian leapt out. The branch swung with a swish, and in an instant the face victims fell to the ground. This wasn't hard for Xie Lian at all, committing his actions to his words, and sure enough, none of those freaks could get close. The crowd within the temple was watching, their breath being held shaken as the fight went on, and when they saw Xie Lian won, they cheered and hollered thanks to the heavens. At that moment, in the night air within the woods, many ghost fires came drifting, dancing madly all over. Xie Lian couldn't tell if they were helping and driving away those face disease victims, but either way, Xie Lian didn't think that they were obstructing him. After making a sweep, Xie Lian tried to sheathe the sword out of habit. Only when the scabbard came empty did Xie Lian realize what he was holding in his hand wasn't a sword but a tree branch, and he felt awkward for a moment. The next second, he saw not far in the distance a white-clad figure waving, beckoning him. Having just fought a battle, Xie Lian's blood was still boiling, and he gave chase. "Don't you think about escaping!" That band of ghost fires also zoomed over and followed after him as he charged forward, like they were lighting his way. Naturally, the white no-face wasn't going to escape, and he strolled at an easy pace, his steps languid, but he always was ahead 7 to 8 feet. Xie Lian pursued for a few feet, but his mind suddenly lit up, and he instantly turned back. Seeing he wasn't chasing anymore, White No-Face stopped. "Why aren't you following?" Xie Lian looked back. "You just want to lead me away in order to spread another round of the human face disease, so why would I follow after you and let you have your way?" However, the White No-Face only smiled. "Oh no, you're mistaken. My objective isn't to lead you away. My objective is only you." Although with the cry-smiling mask on, his expression was concealed. For some reason, Xie Lian could sense he was smiling. Moving him out of the way indeed made no sense. If White No-Face wanted to spread the human face disease again, he could have done so anywhere in the world, and Xie Lian wouldn't have been able to stop him. So why must he do so deep in these mountains? Xie Lian stopped and stepped. "Then just what exactly are you planning?" He had asked the same question countless times and was going to lose his patience. The White No-Face replied, "I already told you. I want you to come by my side." Xie Lian pulled out his tree branch and pointed at him. And while this was not threatening whatsoever and even a little funny, it was nevertheless the only weapon he had on hand. Thank goodness a particularly bright ball of ghost fire landed on the tip of the branch and helped add some battle aura. "Oh my God!" Xie Lian demanded sharply. "What do you want with me on your side? To take your life?" The White No-Face only chuckled softly and said warmly, "Your Highness, you are a beautiful block of jade. Allow me to guide and educate you." Xie Lian was feeling both incredulous and furious and couldn't help but click his tongue. "And to think yourself worthy of educating me? My master is the guoshi of Shanla. And what the heck are you? Where did you come from, you monster?" White No-Face extended a finger and waved it. "You're mistaken again. Your Highness, perhaps it is better to say that in this world, only I am worthy to educate you. Your master? The guoshi of Shanla?" His voice became arrogant and condescending. "Before me, that creature isn't even worth mentioning. On the contrary, you've been taking in very well the things I've been teaching you. Xie Lian spat angrily. What did you teach me? What nonsense are you spewing? I don't understand at all. White No Face humphed mockingly. The first thing I taught you was you are powerless in the face of many things in this world. Hearing this, countless chaotic images and voices flashed through Xie Lian's mind. At last he gritted his teeth and lunged his sword, but the white face easily evaded. The second thing, he sees Xie Lian making him lose his balance and almost trip. Xie Lian felt a hand pet the top of his head. You want to save the common people, do you? The common people don't need to be saved by you. They aren't worthy. Xie Lian's movement faltered for a moment and slapped away the hand, turning around and stabbing again. Pop! But the white no-face snapped the branch in his hand, blitzed behind his person, and two ice-cold fingers were already placed on the two fatal points behind his head. With those two prodding fingers, Xie Lian felt like his brain was going to be pierced at any moment, and he froze. A voice came from behind. If you don't come by my side, then you'll never win against me, and you will always be defeated by me. Xie Lian panted and said darkly, well, come at me any time. After a pause, he slowly enunciated each word. It's only right now that I can't win. You can defeat me countless times, but you can't kill me. As long as you can't kill me, one day I will surely defeat you. When the ghost fire heard his words, it blazed even more ferociously, like it was going to brighten the entire night sky. Behind him, the white no-face was silent for a while. Then he asked, I can't kill you. Xie Lian held his breath and didn't speak. In truth, he didn't know just how tough this undying body Junwu granted him was either. If the white no-face really did smash through his skull in a moment of fury, would he still be alive? Just then, White No-Face said quietly, oh, indeed, I can't kill you. But I won't kill you either. Only, don't be too confident now. I hope you won't have any regrets over this later. Regret? Why would he regret? Xie Lian hadn't figured it out when a hand chopped violently on his neck, and instantly he sank into the darkness. Within the darkness, there seemed to be light and warmth coming from some distance ahead. Xie Lian moved towards the light and came to little by little. He opened his eyes slowly, and the first thing he saw was a ball of ghost fire above him. It seemed the light and warmth he felt while he was unconscious came from it. Seeing he'd woken, the ghost fire immediately came pressing over, and then it seemed to have thought coming too close to him wasn't acceptable, and it backed off slightly. Oh my God! Xie Lian kept feeling that this ball of ghost fire seemed particularly exceptional. If he remembered correctly, the one who created a formation to block him was also it. He wanted to reach out and poke at it, yet unexpectedly his hand couldn't move at all. Xie Lian was perplexed and instantly snapped out of it. He dropped his head to look, and only then did he discover the reason why he couldn't move his hand. His arms and legs were bound. He was firmly tied down upon the altar, the broken base of the statue under his body. There were many people squeezed below the altar, and pair after pair of round, unblinking eyes were watching him. Oh my God, no! What? What? Poor unfortunate souls. What the heck is Bai WuXiang? We don't get any pictures this round. I understand why no artist would want to draw the mooching function Xie Lian debacle that is happening and has happened that we're going to talk about. Oh my God. In these chapters, again, I wanted to cry twice, and then I willed myself not to, but it's getting harder. But the problem is, I don't know. I don't know what Bai WuXiang is, and I'm going to talk about this. And again, I'm going to posit a lot of theories in this discussion, and you all are going to sit on your hands, put your fists in your mouth, chew on your melon seeds, and scream into your pillowcases and be like, Romania, why don't you get it? But I'm genuinely interested in knowing what the heck Bai WuXiang even is. Why are they so obsessed with Xie Lian? They've latched onto Xie Lian like they're a reverend of empty words almost, right? And maybe it is like a reverend of empty words. Maybe Bai WuXiang is like one that's gone to an extreme. I don't know. I want to posit what the hell Bai WuXiang even is, because I guess Bai WuXiang, we're gonna reconfigure this a little bit. Bai WuXiang, we're gonna do death and also identity, because what the hell is it? We'll posit some ideas here. Nothing about WuXiang answered although, except he's the cutest ghost fire ever that is like trying to help like defend Xie Lian, and like when he gets in the little tip of the branch, he like burns as bright. He reminds me of Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle, where he's just like burning bright, and I'm just waiting for Xie Lian to like eat him and ingest him and become Howl. Like, yeah. So I'm like, what the hell? What WuXiang just trying his best as the little ghost fire to follow Xie Lian and keep him safe and try to, but it's just not working out very well for him, right? I don't feel good about the fact that Bai WuXiang has talked to the little ghost fire and been like, what's your name? Well, how interesting. I don't like that. I don't like the ghost fire. I feel like WuXiang does not like Bai WuXiang. He doesn't trust him, but you know, if Bai WuXiang asks him what his name is, he has to say something, right? Interesting. Long Ying, we don't know anything about him. Who's in the pup from Banyu, the second ascent Dishan, we don't get anything with that. We don't get really anything here. Although the guoshi is mentioned. We're going to talk about the guoshi being mentioned. Bai WuXiang knows the guoshi. Bai WuXiang knows the guoshi and does not think highly of him. He is not allowed near the nice furniture. Basically, so, okay, let's talk about Bai WuXiang. Before we dive into this chapters, let's bring him up. What the fudge is he? He's a supreme ghost. Things that we know about him. He's a supreme ghost. He knows the guoshi, or he either knows the guoshi personally or just doesn't think highly of him. He doesn't even call him a human. He calls him a creature. And in the actual book, I went and checked, he calls him a thing. He doesn't even call him a human. So that brings up some suspicions. Where is the guoshi even mortal? Or was he a ghost? Again, we're going back to Wu Yang. Was the guoshi a ghost? And Bai WuXiang's like, oh, he's not even worth our time. He's a ghost that's beneath me. We don't know, right? We know he's a supreme ghost. We know he doesn't think highly of the guoshi. Doesn't really think highly of humanity either. He tells Xie Lian about two things. He says he's like, I need you, the things I want to teach you of the world. Wasn't there 3 things that he wanted to teach him, but he only got to 2? We go back and find this. Like, we are well past the halfway point at this notion. What does he say there? He says, my objective, I like this point here. We're going to get to it in the text, but I'll go ahead and he says, my objective isn't to lead you away. My objective is you. So he has a fixation on Xie Lian. For some reason, he has a fixation on him, right? He's like, I want you to join me. He wants Xie Lian to join him. For whatever reason, he wants Xie Lian to join him by his side. And Xie Lian's like, whatever. I love the just ghost fire landing on the tip. WuXiang just on the tip of his sword being like, come at me, bro. And then he's like, he's like, allow me. You are a beautiful block of jade. So he calls Xie Lian this block of jade. Like something so precious. And he's like, let me guide you and educate you. Now, does that mean that Bai WuXiang wants to corrupt him or like teach him the errors of his ways? I think it's the latter. He's like, teach you. My master is the state preceptor of Shanla. Who the heck are you? Where'd you come from, monster? I love that Bai WuXiang's like, nah. You don't get to say things. He's like, you're mistaken. He's like, no, it'd be better to say, I'm the only one worthy to educate you. Like, he's like, I'm the only one good enough. He's like, your master, the state preceptor. And I like it says, his voice turns strangely arrogant and condescending. That thing isn't worth mentioning in my presence. You've been absorbing my lessons very well. So he refers to the guoshi as a thing. So he doesn't like the guoshi. So interestingly enough, we had the guoshi and the mountain spirits that were trying to lure someone, we assume Xie Lian, to Mount Tonglu, being like, we just need to lure him there. There's no point in saving him at this point. So we were wondering whether it was Bai WuXiang that the guoshi then we're talking about, or if it was Xie Lian. And we think it's Xie Lian. Well, now we know Bai WuXiang does not think highly of the guoshi, so it would be weird. Do we think that the guoshi and Bai WuXiang are working together if Bai WuXiang hates them so much? I don't know. I think that there's a possibility that, yes, they are working for Bai WuXiang, and Bai WuXiang just thinks less of them. Kind of like Qirong thinks less of his minions. Qirong's like, those things aren't worth our time, but they help me get my job done, so I employ them. You know, it could be that Bai WuXiang just doesn't think highly of the guoshi, but is still employing the guoshi at his side. Maybe, and is like, oh, well, the guoshi taught you? The guoshi works under me, sort of thing. We don't know for sure, but Bai WuXiang, the one thing Bai WuXiang gets ruffled about is the guoshi, which is fascinating. It's the one thing that kind of gets under his skin a little bit, and he's like, no, how dare you speak of him? So he's like, you've been absorbing my lessons. So he only mentions 2 lessons, right? He says the first thing is that you are powerless. You're powerless in the face of many things in the world. And you know what? That's not wrong. We're going to talk about this. He says the second thing is you want to save the common people. The common people are not worthy of saving. Okay, so I think that based on these 2 things, I have this presumption, okay, that Bai WuXiang, let's go through the crazy theories of what Bai WuXiang can be. Let's start with the theory that might be the most obvious. I think that possibly, I'll turn this over. I think that possibly Bai WuXiang could be the Prince of Wuyang. He's the Prince of Wuyang, possibly. And that he fell from grace and somehow became a ghost. Fell from grace from the heavens, became mortal, and then died and became a ghost. Instead of ascending, he became a ghost instead. And I think that because the 2 things he wants Xie Lian to learn are, one, that you're powerless in the face of many things in the world, which could go back to Wuyang falling, could go back to Mount Tonglu erupting, and if Bai WuXiang started out as the crown prince there that failed to save his people and then fell from grace, it could be the idea that he's like, well, you know, Xie Lian has this boundless optimism that he can save the common people and save the world, and Bai WuXiang's like, yeah, I tried that, it didn't work out, so you shouldn't try that either because it's not going to work for you. That could be one of the things. The second thing is the common people are not worthy of saving. We had that one mural where it showed the people transcending to the heavenly realm. What if that was his plan and it didn't happen? And it didn't happen because the people weren't worth saving. So Bai WuXiang's pretty apathetic about the human race, doesn't think they're worth saving. He says you're powerless in the face of natural disasters and things beyond all your control. So it seems to me like he's the Prince of Wuyang. He fell from grace, and now he's obsessed with Xie Lian. He's obsessed with Xie Lian because Xie Lian is very much like him. And so he's trying to be like, I want to get you from having the same thing happen to you, but it's kind of like twisted and messed up, right? So other theories are that Bai WuXiang is Xie Lian, is a like shadow of Xie Lian somehow. When deities ascend, do they like cast off a shadow version of themselves, and that's what Bai WuXiang becomes? When you ascend, do you like part of your spirit, does it become a ghost and part of you ascend? I don't know. That seems pretty far-fetched. But Bai WuXiang's like a shadow version of him. I don't know. Or, you know, the scary thing is that Xie Lian is Bai WuXiang. Is that part of it? Is there any Bai WuXiang at all? You know, or is it all just in Xie Lian's head? That's what's so freaky about all of this, is that the freaky thing is that Xie Lian like, they saw him in the forest, though. Muqing and Fengshen saw Bai WuXiang in the forest. They know he's there. He was something else. They've physically seen him, so they know he's not Xie Lian. But this story, it makes you really question whether Bai WuXiang is just an extension of Xie Lian's self. And Xie Lian just is the White Calamity, and we've just been... But then how did Junwu kill it? You know, what was that all about? Or Xie Lian, is him killing Bai WuXiang, Junwu killing that part of Xie Lian? And it's all been in his head? Because Xie Lian's not a reliable narrator. We've established that. So Xie Lian telling us that Junwu killed him, it's like, well, did he, or did Junwu just kill that part of you? And you've just repressed your memory or remembered things a certain way to not be traumatized and suppress that. But it's like, why else? I could definitely see if Bai WuXiang was from Wuyang and he saw Xie Lian and saw a similar situation with Shanla, as was with Wuyang, and saw that comparison, was like, yes, I can relate to this kid. We've got things in common. Yes, I need to get to him and corrupt him or whatever because he's a ghost. I could see that, but God, the fact of the matter that he's so obsessed with Xie Lian, knows everything about Xie Lian, doesn't necessarily... Now, the thing that is freaky when we get to it is that he was like, oh, I can't kill you. Oh, you want me to test that theory? I'm like, no! But we need to get to that first. We need to get that. So we're going to pause on Bai WuXiang for a little bit till we get to the parts with him. I want to talk a little bit about the timeline. I went back and looked at Volume 1 briefly. So we know that 800 years ago, in the 800-year span, around within a couple of years of all this, we have Xie Lian ascending and then falling. The whole thing with Bai WuXiang happens. They're on the run. And in Volume 6, where we are now, all this stuff is happening within that 800 years ago range, right? That's what we know. And then we have this big old gap, right? We have 800 years ago to roughly, let me get this right, 300 years ago. 300 years ago, we have the Gilded Banquet, right? The Gilded Banquet incident. And Xie Lian in the coffin that we were talking about at the beginning of this reaction, right? Then we have a period of 100 years to 200 years ago where we have the idea of the whole Banyu incident with Xie Lian and Banyu. And then apparently around 150 years ago, 50 years later, that's when supposedly Banyu's ghost and Pei Su started to have weird things happening because they said it became a barren desert. Or that's around the time that the puppet talks was 150 years ago, was the puppet talking, right? And then we have the present, where we are now. So around this 300 mark was when Xie Lian said he descended a second time. So there is a big old gap of 500 years. 500 years where we don't know what happened. There's a big old gap there, right? Because all this stuff is happening within that 180 to 750 year period or whatever. There's a 500 year period. We don't know what happened. And that is starting to weigh on me a little bit. So I'm like, wait a minute. What the Gilded Banquet was 300 years ago. Oh God, what happened in the 500 years, right? Huh? And so then, because that basically assumes that something happened to Xie Lian, what happened in those 500 years before the event that caused Xie Lian to ascend a second time? What happened? If Xie Lian's going through a rough patch right now, and it's been less than a year since all that happened, what's going to happen in 500 years? And Xie Lian's going to ascend again for 10 minutes, go back, and then go to Fengshen and Yong'an. What? I'm a bit terrified to know what Xie Lian does for 500 years if he's wallowing in misery now and it's only been months. You know, it makes you feel not good about this timeline. I'm like, oh, this seems like a long time, right? it makes you very, very hesitant about it. So yeah, poor unfortunate souls. Bai WuXiang is basically Ursula. He comes in there and Xie Lian realizes, the thing about it is, Bai WuXiang doesn't kill him. He doesn't want to. He's just torturing him. And he clearly has the ability to kill Xie Lian at any time, as he demonstrates. But instead, he's just like, you poor innocent. And by the way, this chapter, the title in the official English translation, part 99 here, is called Warm Words of a Cold Ghost Beguile the Lost Child. Like this ghost trying to coddle him and lure this poor unfortunate child to him, right? The fact of I wanted somebody to draw a White Note face hugging Xie Lian, and Xie Lian being like, he's like, it's so sad, Your Highness, look at yourself, look what they've done to you. And I do think that could be that Bai WuXiang relates to Wuyang being like, oh, I went through the same thing. I know exactly what you've gone through. And I didn't have... I get the distinct impression that Bai WuXiang is like yandere for Xie Lian. I really think he is. I think he's like yandere for him. And he's like, because there's a moment in the text, when we get to it, where he says something that sounds very HuaChang-ish, but like the dark yandere version of it. And I was like, oh no. And HuaChang's like, no. But it almost feels like Bai WuXiang didn't have a HuaChang. Bai WuXiang fell. He fell hard. And then he didn't have a HuaChang that tried to save him or protect him or guide him. And so he just died, became a ghost, and became this monster. You know? That's my theory at this point about Bai WuXiang. Could be wrong. I'm ready to be wrong, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But there is a moment, but I do think maybe Bai WuXiang is a little bit yandere for Xie Lian, which is terrifying, because our poor boy, he's doing well enough to recognize feelings for a ghost king that's loved him for 800 years unconditionally. He ain't got time for some yandere spirit doing the same. Like HuaChang don't need no competition, right? I love the description, though, of the smiling part of the mask being hidden in the darkness and only the crying part. Like, I want to see, because at the point where Xie Lian just starts sobbing in the arms of Bai WuXiang, I just, oh my God, as Xie Lian is like sobbing in the like embrace of Bai WuXiang, I want to see somebody draw him with the half mask holding Xie Lian like some kind of Renaissance painting. I need this in my life. I might do this myself. But I was like, oh my God. And then the little ball of ghost fire wanted to warm him, but it wasn't confident it could chase away the cold, so it didn't press close. Watching this entire chapter set, just getting next to Xie Lian and trying to warm him and help him, trying to protect him. Y'all, I can't. I want to root for HuaChang so badly, because I'm like, come on, HuaChang, you gotta get strong enough to protect your Gege. Like, come on now. And Xie Lian being like, who's gonna go to your side, you monster? And he's like, you'll come to my side one day. I feel like Bai WuXiang is like yandere in this moment, where he's like, you'll come to my side. He's like, I'll make your life so miserable that you have no choice but to come to my side. And it's like what the fudge? He's like, you're sick in the head. And the thing of it is, he hides his face. He takes off the mask and he hides his face. The mask gets knocked off, but he hides it to where Xie Lian can't see. And I'm like, if his face was really Xie Lian's face, then if he had time to make the fake face, then it wouldn't have been a big deal. But I'm like, we don't get to see what his face looks like. And I'm like, sons of bitches, why? Why? Show us his face. I hope we get to see it by the end. I hope that we get to see Bai WuXiang's face by the end of this. I think we will, but I'm like, his true face, not a fake one. And then I love that he's sitting there and he's like, are you sick in the head? He's like, yeah, you'll come in this world. No one but me will truly understand you, and no one but me will forever stay by your side. He's yandere. He's yandere for Xie Lian, right? And so, yeah, what is this thing here? Find this page of him. I wanted to see what he said there to Xie Lian, where he talked to him. He says, you will come to my side one day. And he says, no one in this world will ever truly understand you, and no one will stay by your side except for me. And Xie Lian's like, no, that isn't true just because you say so. And I love that the ball of ghost fire is just like nodding him down, like, no. Yeah. Oh my god, that's what this is. Bai WuXiang is like, he is yandere for Xie Lian, being like, I can be the only one who understands you. I know what you're going through. I'm going to make you share the same fate as I did at Wuyang, and then we'll be together forever. And it's like, no! And then I like that WuXiang's like, you don't know what love is. You don't love him. I didn't know. I was out here thinking the love triangle was between Junwoo and Xie Lian and WuXiang. No, the love triangle is within Bai WuXiang, Xie Lian, and WuXiang. And if Bai WuXiang turns out to be Xie Lian, then it's like the worst form of self-love. It's like toxic self-love. What? Ugh. I don't know. I just don't know. Or the other theory I had as I was reading, which is not correct, I'm sure, but I'm going to go ahead and posit it, is what if the Prince of Wuyang, when they died, they split their soul in two, and one became WuXiang and one became Bai WuXiang, and they both fell in love with Xie Lian, but WuXiang's love is like the pure good love, like unconditional, unfaltering, like soulmate love, and Bai WuXiang's is like the most toxic, like terrible love, but they're both supreme good. They both become supreme ghosts that are after the same guy. I know. It's fun to think up these theories, right? It's fun to think up these theories. I know you guys have a spreadsheet of all my wacko theories. Add those to it, and we'll see what Bai WuXiang ends up becoming. But we're gonna add his identity to this because, and who is the prince goes along with that, right? We'll just go there. But yeah, Xie Lian just being like, get out of here. And he says, oh, is there someone? Maybe there were some people in your past, but do you think they'd be here from now on? And Bai WuXiang is basically like, he's like, I'm going to stay here waiting for you, but those people that you think like you, eventually they're going to be gone or they're going to abandon you, and then you'll come back to me. Again, it's like a toxic form of WuXiang, because WuXiang respects Xie Lian. He respects his boundaries. He doesn't try to force Xie Lian to like him. He doesn't try to force Xie Lian by his side. He's just there as a constant presence. And Bai WuXiang is like trying to force Xie Lian to join him and trying to like run everybody else out of his life. It's crazy, right? It's really freaking weird. And then he sweeps up and grabs the ball of ghost fire. And then he like knocks Xie Lian out. And he's like, Spirit, tell me, what is your name? As he held within his palm the blazing ghost fire. I don't like the idea that Bai WuXiang was like holding WuXiang in his hand being like, tell me your name. Like, you know, I don't like that at all. I'm not a fan. Personally not a fan. I'm like, stay away from WuXiang, Bai WuXiang. Nobody needs you to be doing that. So then, like, Xie Lian wakes up and thanks God. The scene where he goes back to the cabin, I was like, MXTX, we just dealt with WuXiang. We don't have to go back and do this again. But MXTX is like, were you tortured enough? No, you weren't. I was like, dang it, no. And so then Xie Lian shows back up and there's WuXiang. And I'm really torn in this moment, right? I'm really torn because I do feel for WuXiang in this moment. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be a cold and heartless wench. I know a lot of people don't like WuXiang, and I was really pissed off at him in the last volume set. Last week's chapters, not happy at all. I do feel for him here because I do think that WuXiang felt bad for how he treated Xie Lian. He realized he fucked up. He's like, I messed up. I did something I shouldn't have. And so he tries to remedy the situation. He's like, I'm going to bring rice. I'm going to get medicine. I'm going to try my best to help y'all. I shouldn't have abandoned you. I'm sorry. And he's genuine. And it's the perfect storm of bad timing. The perfect storm of it. Because you have WuXiang show up right after all this just went down. You know, right after it. Like it's been 2 days or so we think. And it's just like right after it, right? Or it's been 20 days since he left home. We don't know how long it's been since the whole Bai WuXiang incident and the stuff on the mountain, but it had been 20 days since he left home. Coming back. It had been right after he left. Xie Lian is terrified of Bai WuXiang. He's worried about his family. He feels betrayed by WuXiang. He feels like nobody cares for him anymore, or he's worried about the people he cares about abandoning him or dying. So he's under all this stress. He's like, for the first time in Xie Lian's life, he's in a place where he is not in control of anything anymore. And so it's just completely spiraling around him. He's unraveling. He's angry. He's mad. He's exhausted. It's just this perfect storm of everything negative that could possibly be happening to Xie Lian. And he shows up, and the last person he wants to see, which is WuXiang, is standing at his door. And it's like Xie Lian has this moment of pride where WuXiang like says, "Hey, I'm sorry. My bad. Here's this stuff. I got you things." And Xie Lian's like, "We don't want it." It's like, you don't need it. And I was like, Xie Lian, don't do that. I was like, Xie Lian, don't do that, honey. I was like, do not turn it away. It's like, you just cringe because you just know you're like, you do need it. You should take it. And it's like, there is a part there that should be like, you should accept you should be forgiving of WuXiang because he's offering to do you. And yeah, WuXiang did something awful and terrible, but you should just forgive him and let him back into your life. You know, don't make him go away. And Xie Lian makes him go away. And Xie Lian is in the wrong making him go away because it was like, but then you know why he did it. And you can't blame him, but you're just like, damn it. It hurts so bad. And WuXiang apologizing for the first time, genuinely saying, "I'm sorry." And Xie Lian saying, "Please leave." And for Xie Lian to say that, and it be the exact words WuXiang told him earlier on the mountain, and Fengshen being like, "What's going on?" I do feel bad for Fengshen in these chapters. I do. Because Fengshen didn't know. He didn't know what was going on. He was very much like, I thought it was weird that he left, but he came back to give us food. And then once he finds out that what WuXiang did, Fengshen gets pissed and he defends Xie Lian. He's like, "Get out, you hobo! How dare you!" And then Fengshen tries to help Xie Lian. He feels like Xie Lian's going crazy. Like his mom and dad even feel like it. And so he's trying to defend him. And he's trying to do stuff to help Xie Lian. But Xie Lian's like, no. The one thing that's suspicious that is going to come back is Fengshen asking for money. And we'll talk about that in a minute. We're not there yet, though. But being like, what did he do? And I do think Xie Lian is right to say, like, well, WuXiang, why don't you tell him why I'm coming back? That part, like, it's this perfect storm of bad. Because on the one hand, I feel bad for WuXiang because he did try to come back and do something good. He did try to make nice and do something good, but it was too little too late. And on the one hand, there's that. And I do feel he's genuinely sorry and feels bad. But on the other hand, he didn't tell Fengshen anything about what happened. And so when Xie Lian's like, "Why don't you tell him what's going on?" And WuXiang's like, "Oh my God." And then Fengshen gets pissed and it's bad. And the fact that Xie Lian chases him out with a broom. We all make fun of WuXiang now when we hand him a broom. We're like, "Here you go." But like that moment, oof, that is oof. And it the broom cut his cheek. And then the idea that WuXiang told Fengshen about the robbery and Fengshen didn't know, and WuXiang immediately realizes what he did and is like, oh, it's just bad all around. Everybody's in the wrong. Everybody just needs to hold hands, hug each other like Bai WuXiang just did, and forgive each other, but that's not happening. It's just everyone's too stressed for that. And when WuXiang's like, "I am leaving now." The only good thing that comes out of these chapters, the only thing that I think kept me from crying in these moments was knowing that 800 years from now, everything's okay for the most part. Fengshen's still mad at him. It's amazing that Fengshen and WuXiang kept their antagonistic anger at each other for 800 years going. Like, for 800 years, they squabbled over who did Xie Lian wrong the most. For 800 years. And Xie Lian at the end is just like, "Hey, guys, it's been a long time, but, it's been a while. We should probably be over this by now." Ugh. WuXiang hasn't forgotten, though. WuXiang is like, nope. And I still don't know what their conversation on the mountain was, but we'll find out. But it's just so hard to read. It's really hard, right? It's really hard. And Xie Lian's like, I don't want to talk about it. And the worst part is that it's like, at that moment, there is this sense that things can never be what they once were. That Xie Lian has driven WuXiang away, and he's not coming back. So that friendship is ruined. He's burned that bridge. And at the moment, 800 years ago, it seems like that's never going to happen again. And then him and Fengshen, because of that robbery not being explained, it's like the friendship they once had, the trust they once had is completely gone. It's never going to be the same. And even when Xie Lian's like, don't you trust me? Do you think I'm hallucinating? And Fengshen's like, well, I do. And Xie Lian's like, you don't fully trust me, though. And it's just, it's horrible because it's like that everything Xie Lian had in his life is completely ruined. And you don't know whether to laugh or to cry. You know? It's awful. It's so hard. To the point where his parents, who he's supposed to be worried about, are worried about him. Now, the whole thing with Bai WuXiang, the whole thing with Bai WuXiang teasing him and torturing him is terrifying. The idea that every nook and cranny, everywhere he turns, like when he bathes, everything, he keeps getting these visions that he's Bai WuXiang, which he's a ghost, so, but it almost makes you wonder, like, is he a reverend of empty words that's gone awry? I don't know. And then all they say is, like, aren't you tired? And Xie Lian's like, is this me? That line that he looks like a worker beaten to pulp by a wealthy master, it seems like a counter of that argument from a few chapters ago where it was the servant who was, let down by the master, and now it seems to be flipped, right? It's like the worker who was beaten to a pulp by the master. Like Xie Lian is now in the position of a servant. He's no longer the one in control, right? And so, and Xie Lian, he's worried to tell Fengshen about White No Face because he's like, what if he leaves me? Then what do I do? And it's so sad to see Xie Lian just like in this point of madness where he's just, the moment where Xie Lian is in his cottage floor and his parents stumble upon him and he's naked out of the bathtub, just crawling on the ground naked and terrified. There's a lot of moments from Modao Zushi that no longer have like the happy fuzzy feelings from Modao Zushi. Like anytime I think of Modao Zushi in a temple, I think of making out, romance. Now that I think of any time with a temple, I'm like, nope, freaky shit's going down. Nope. And then anytime I think of like a bathtub Modao Zushi, I'm like, oh, some steamy stuff's about to happen. No, now that I see a bathtub in Heaven Official's Blessing, I'm like, well, Xie Lian is crawling on the ground naked while his mom embraces him and they're all just like in a state of despair. MXTX is like, we're going to change the imagery up just a little bit. Hope y'all are okay with that. And I'm like, I'm not! No! And then the White No Face it was too bizarrely powerful. The moment that Fengshen came in and was exhausted and was asking Xie Lian for something and said he had something to tell Xie Lian, I thought he was leaving. I thought that was going to be it. I thought Fengshen was going to be like, I can't do it. I got to go. I thought that was going to be the case, but it wasn't. I'm like, oh my God. I thought that was going to be the case, but it wasn't. So I'm like, so luckily, instead, he said, do you have anything that you want to pawn? And that part's so weird to me because I'm like, Xie Lian, they don't have anything. Like that's why they're busking. That's the point. They don't have anything. They're busking because there's no money, nothing to pawn, just the golden belt left. And he's like, why do you ask this? He's like, can you lend me some? And he's like, that's not enough, far from it. And he's like, how can the golden belt not be enough? So I'm like, is it for a dowry to marry Jean Lan? Was he trying to get enough money to marry her and get her a house? Or was he trying to get enough money to like get her set up with a house or somewhere safe for her and the baby? I feel like that's going to come out in the wash, but Xie Lian makes some mistakes in this chapter, especially with WuXiang and not forgiving him. And I know people will argue, I try to be forgiving. I don't like holding grudges. And I feel like in the situation that they're in, and Xie Lian just got done saying he hated like having his friend abandoning him, having his friend come back. I mean, I get why Xie Lian says no. I get it. And WuXiang made a lot of mistakes. Xie Lian made a lot of mistakes. And then Feng Xin makes some mistakes where he doesn't tell Xie Lian what's going on. I'm like, and I get why Feng Xin doesn't do it, because he thinks that Xie Lian's in this horrible state, and he is. So Feng Xin doesn't want to tell him about Zhan Lan because he's like, oh my God, my friend is in this really bad state. I don't want to burden him with my problems while he's dealing with all this. So, but I just thought I'd ask. And then it's almost like he realizes it was a mistake to ask, and it's like, ugh. It's just heartbreaking. It is the worst. The worst. Just gets like sadder and sadder as I go. And so Xie Lian just keeps seeing all of this and getting more and more exhausted, to the point where his family and Feng Xin start talking behind his back about how they don't want to provoke him, just let him sleep. And Xie Lian is just like, I'm not crazy. I'm going crazy, but I'm not crazy. And then Xie Lian just gets out. He's like, you guys don't understand anything. And he just leaves. And he's like, don't mind me and don't follow me. I feel like that's the second time that Xie Lian has said that. That's the second time Xie Lian has said, don't mind me, don't follow me. And I feel like the third time he says it, Feng Xin is not going to follow him. I feel like the third time he says it, Feng Xin's going to be like, okay, I'm not following you then. Fine. And then Xie Lian's going to be alone. Now the question is that third time going to be if his parents die? I don't know. Things aren't good with his dad. His mom's not in good spirits either. And things just don't look good. When he said, I wanted to pull this up, when Xie Lian goes out in the woods, he like goes out, and again, it's like Benzie Hill all over again, where he goes out looking for the white no-face and trying to call him out of hiding, and like, come on out. But when he says, he's like, come the hell out, you gutter monster, get the hell over here. There's some show that Trixie Mattel and Katya were like reacting to, and it has this like southern rednecks on them, and they were saying like, you gutter sluts. Just the phrase gutter sluts is hilarious. So I just imagine Xie Lian calling Bai WuXiang a gutter slut. Come out, you gutter slut. She's like, don't call me that. Oh my God. You gutter slut. Just coming out. Yep. And the white no face. But instead, he keeps going over, and then he's going towards the woods that are clearly like the deep, dark woods you shouldn't walk into. They might be a problem. Could be something dangerous. I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't go in there. And Xie Lian's like, well, if that's where Bai WuXiang is, I'm just going to go in the scary, dark woods and see what happens. And that's when all the ghosts like form this little wall, and they're like, no, don't go there. Don't come back. It felt like Labyrinth when the voices inside of the walls are like, don't go there. Leave now and never return, and do all that. But the main ghost leading all the other little ghosts is WuXiang. And the thing about it is, WuXiang doesn't speak anymore. Throughout this, he doesn't speak. So I find that curious that WuXiang doesn't talk anymore, or Xie Lian can't hear him. Again, Xie Lian is not a reliable narrator at this point, so it could very well be that Ghostfire has been trying to talk to Xie Lian this whole time, but Xie Lian has just zoned him out because of whatever reason. But Xie Lian gets mad, and he's just like, he's like, don't follow me. He's like, keep following me and you might just disperse. And that doesn't get them to leave because they don't take him seriously. But then Xie Lian says, even a Ghostfire, little ghost like you is like this. You're all like this. Everyone's like this. And it's the idea that Xie Lian, I mean, this is not the Xie Lian we see 800 years later. The Xie Lian 800 years later is like so numb and has become this blank slate, this humbled little old man that's traversed for 800 years and still looks hot. Like, that's literally Xie Lian. No, this is 20-year-old Xie Lian who is used to having his way and used to being a heavenly official that can do anything, and now he's powerless, and he gets arrogant, he makes mistakes, and it's like, yeah, nope. We've all been there. This not to the extent of Xie Lian, I hope. I hope none of you all have been to that extent, but we've all been there where we've said things to friends that we regret. And we've all been there where we're like, everybody's just against me. You know, like everybody has that like rebellious, like that teenage phase where you think, or even a young adult phase where you think that everybody's against you and it's not healthy. Like, I think everybody's gone through at least a little bit of that period in their life. I know I have. I can relate to a lot to Xie Lian here. I know I've said horrible things to my parents before when I was in my teenage years, like just like that, like, you don't understand me, and then, you know, regretted it later. And I know that I've said things to friends like when I was in high school that I regret, that was kind of like what Xie Lian says there. Like, you go through it and it just makes reading it all the more heartbreaking, you know? But it seems like the Ghostfire, when they hear that, they realize that Xie Lian is angry and sad, and they back off. And they back off. WuXiang backs off and lets Xie Lian have his space. And that's when he runs into the temple. Now, the whole idea of this temple, I don't get good vibes from it, because why lure all the people there? Something's going down, right? Something's going down. Because if you were just trying to lure Xie Lian into the temple and trap him there, that's one thing. You could have done that easily. I mean, like, that should have already been a thing. But that's not what the White No-Face does. It lures all these people there, like all different kinds of people. And I thought that maybe the White No-Face was luring them all there so that they would recognize Xie Lian as the Crown Prince of Shanla, which they still very well could. And if they would, like, just torture him, you know, just be like, you're the Crown Prince of Shanla, like, why didn't you save your people and all this, just to torture him and make him feel bad again, right? And bring up the human face disease. Like, again, so does that establish that Bai WuXiang caused the human face disease? Because I remember we talked about this. I don't want to know full answers. We'll find out. But it seems like the human face disease is caused by Bai WuXiang, and not Long Ying or Long Ying's kid. It was Bai WuXiang that created the human face disease and sicked it upon these. Or did he even? Or is it just an illusion? Are they puppets? All the people in this temple could be puppets of Bai WuXiang for all we know. That's the scary thing. We don't know who they are. Are they real people? Are they puppets of Bai WuXiang? Are they just there to torture Xie Lian? We don't know. It seems like they're real people, but we don't know. And then the human face disease breaking out. I wouldn't be surprised if the ones with the human face disease are puppets of Bai WuXiang, just to freak the people out and make them react more. Like, it could very well be that Bai WuXiang lured all these people here to just torture Xie Lian. Because, again, it's the common people, right? Xie Lian's like, I'll save the common people. And Bai WuXiang's like, they're not worthy of you saving them. So I wonder if Bai WuXiang lured all these common people here, put them in this pressure cooker, and then released some puppets with the human face disease, seemingly, to shake things up, make people freak out, and then be like, okay, Xie Lian, now save them. They're the common people you're going to save. What are you going to do? And how are they going to react when you try to save them and it backfires? It's like he just is trying to disillusion Xie Lian so much. And I feel like that's what he's trying to do. But Xie Lian manages to save them. He takes the stick and beats them with the stick, which is hilarious that he beats them all with the stick back. And then he tries to get them all there. And then that's when he sees the White No-Face. Because I like at that moment, he's like, this is the domain, the Hall of the Crown Prince. He's like, I'm going to swing the sword and save everyone. And that one line that says you, I think the people are going to notice that he's the Crown Prince after he saved him, right? So I think that, because we end it, what we do is that he goes and sees the White No-Face, and that's, he's like, why aren't you following? And he's like, you want to lead me away to spread the disease? He's like, no, my only objective's you. And he's like, I want you to come to my side. And I love that Ghostfire's like, never. I like that WuXiang's on the end of the stick, like, that's never going to happen. He's like, you're a beautiful block of jade. Allow me to educate you. And so then he says, and then I like the idea that he, like, gets right behind Xie Lian, has 2 points on the fatal point of his head. And that's when Xie Lian says, if you don't come to my side, you'll never win against me, and you'll always be defeated by me. So he's like, if you don't join me, I will always torment you till the end of time, and you'll always be defeated by me. And that's when Xie Lian says, he says, come at me anytime. And then he slowly enunciated, I can't win. You can defeat me countless times, but you can't kill me. As long as you can't kill me, one day I will surely defeat you. So that, and then when the ghost fire heard his words, it blazed even more ferociously, like it was going to brighten the entire night sky. So like Guoxiang's like, damn right, you can't beat him. You can't beat my Gege. That's right. I love that moment. And now it makes sense in the kiln why Bai WuXiang wants to break Xie Lian and have him kill himself. Because it's true. Junwu has made it to where Xie Lian's body can't die. Because Junwu, you know, has a thing for Xie Lian. And he's like, he's made it to where Xie Lian's body can't die. So Xie Lian's like, you can try to destroy me, but I won't be stopped. I can't be stopped. And because of that, I will defeat you one day. I will last longer than you. And that's why Bai WuXiang is trying to break him. He's trying to break him so that he'll kill himself. And then Bai WuXiang can kill him. That's the ticket. That's the deal, right? And then he's like, oh, well, I can't kill you, but I won't kill you. It's like, I hope you don't have any regrets. That's a bad thing. That's a very bad thing. That's a bad thing that Bai WuXiang is like, oh, I can't kill you? Oh, are you sure that that's not a good thing? Are you sure it's a good thing that I can't kill you? Okay, let's test that. I'm like, no, let's not test that. So I don't like where this is headed. Not a bit. No. Because she knocked Xie Lian out. He has this obsession with altars. Again, I feel like he's the crown prince of Wuyang. He's got the whole obsessed with the temples and everything. And putting Xie Lian up on the pedestal. That is the creepiest description. There are people squeezed below the altar, pair after pair of round, unblinking eyes watching him. That's terrifying. What the fudge, MXTX? So, all these common people have been brought together with Xie Lian, and Xie Lian says he's going to save the common people. He's not scared of Bai WuXiang, and Bai WuXiang is like, okay, let's see you save these common people. So I have a feeling that maybe he's going to torture the people in the temple with Xie Lian, and Xie Lian, because he's tied up, he's going to be like, why can't you save them? And just like torture him. I don't like where this is headed. And Feng Shen's not around, and Hua Chang's a little ghost fire. They can't do anything. And I don't like where this is headed. And you know what the worst part is? Next week is one chapter. Chapter 190. It is nearly 30 pages. We're just going to do the one chapter. Because after that is like a 40-page segment of chapters 191 193. And then after that is a 5-chapter segment, which is like nearly 50 pages. So next week may be a short week. Next week may be a short week with chapter 190. But you know what? I've talked for nearly an hour about these chapters. And, But yeah, oh my God. Have I ever done a one-chapter one before? Have I done just one chapter? I have not. At least not since volume 4. I don't know if I've done one chapter before, but next week seemed like a pretty big chapter, so we'll see. But yeah, these chapters hurt. They hurt a lot. Bai WuXiang adds enough mystery to make me not feel so much in pain. It was a nice, as weird as it is to say, it was a break from the torture that is the trio of Feng Shen, Muqing, and Xie Lian. They just make me want to break my heart even more. But I'm so curious about Bai WuXiang. I want to know his history. I want to know why he thinks so poorly of the guoshi. And I know we're going to find out. So, it's just a matter of time. I'm going to be getting volume 7 in the mail soon, which is exciting. As soon as I get it, maybe, you know what? Maybe I will get my copy of volume 7 in time for next week's reaction, and I can do a cover reaction, a reveal of the cover, and react to it along with chapter 190. Maybe that'll be good. We'll do that. Yep. And then, yeah, so in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all again soon next week with hopefully volume 7's cover reveal and chapter 190 of Heaven Official's Blessing. Bye.